Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I really enjoyed that conversation with Adam Butler. He's so passionate about the wild turkey program, and he's not just passionate, he knows what he's talking about. And as he said, one of the great stories of the North American wildlife conservation model that Mississippi adopted many years ago. In fact, wild turkey might have been like the first wildlife species that we really focused on. But the story across the board, across so many different species, is truly remarkable, what we've been able to do by sort of adopting the North American wildlife conservation model. But we're right at the heart. As he said, the next 2 weeks are going to be fast and furious in the wild turkey world, and it'll be fun to kind of watch and see how that all plays out. But if you're out in the woods, enjoy yourself, stay safe, as I always say. Now let's shift gears and move over to my friend Anthony Ballard, who I actually said was a nuisance species biologist, but actually he's since he started in a quasi role back in November, but today actually is the new black bear program leader. So let me welcome you to Super Talk Outdoors, Anthony, and also say congratulations to you, my friend.
I appreciate it. Always enjoy being on the show.
It's good to see you. Look, I'm for people who are watching on Super Talk TV or Facebook or YouTube, you can see that you're sitting on a deck somewhere with a beautiful, wooded area behind you. Where are you right now?
Right now I'm at Holmes County State Park, one of our many beautiful state parks. Here, feeling the cool breeze from the storms here coming off the lake. So it's a pretty cool place to be.
So what are you doing there? Well, it's a big meeting that you're involved in, right?
Yeah. So our wildlife officers, our cadets, after they go through the Law Enforcement Training Academy, they go through what we call MCOTA, which is the Mississippi Conservation Officer Training Academy. That's a mouthful. And our wildlife staff, our technical staff, come through in a week, and they'll give kind of a sampler platter, if you will, of sort of a crash course of each individual program and what they do in the agency. And so it gives those officers a good chance to be able to kind of absorb some of that and be able to speak intelligently about what we do as well as what they do.
Yeah, you and I chatted a little bit before the show started that when people think of Mississippi, we don't think typically about black bear. I mean, the average person doesn't think typically about the black bear. But, I mentioned to you that in and around the areas where I hunt in the Mississippi Delta, there have been many sightings, even some game camera pictures of bears. Mississippi's got a growing population of bear, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And during the wintertime, we'll get a few. There's a lot of denning activity then, but especially the people that run those cameras into the spring, and some people even run them year round. Now you've got cell cameras in the woods all over the place, and so there's more and more pictures that are being taken and more sightings every year.
People have heard of Shark Week. It's very popular. I guess it's Discovery Channel or whoever does it, but right. Really popular now. Most of the other big programs like National Geographic have their indications of that. But we have Bear Week. Tell me about Bear Week.
We do. So this is the first year that it's been rolled out. It's kind of a social media push, and a lot of our posts are sort of one day or even one single post about an interesting topic or whatever. But we had enough content, and we really want to kind of peel back the onion of what the bear program does, the work that we do, and sort of highlight that. And so every day this week on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, we'll have different posts about the work that we've been doing last summer, so summer of 22, and then into this winter and spring too.
It's interesting. Social media actually is a really good tool. I know you guys are focused on biology and research and just general information about the bears, but you get to, like, Mississippi Whitetails on Facebook has a ton of members. There are other really good outdoor websites in Mississippi, and you can go there. And pretty regularly, though, people are posting pictures of bears and whatever. That's really actually a good way to collect information, isn't it?
Yeah, and there are actually several. There's one that Louisiana have, and then at the end of this week, we'll actually be sharing a Facebook page where that's the purpose of the Facebook page is to share nothing but pictures. So basically, it'll be a picture. Most of the time, it's a game camera picture, and then the county that picture came from, and it's all about bears. So it'll be a good tool for us to kind of to locate some of those that may be outside of the normal range and possibly do location at the very least, and then possibly trapping and collaring and that sort of thing as well.
Hey, I think it's exciting that you guys are doing that. I predict it's going to be a really, really, really popular social media presence. And as soon as you get that page up, make sure your folks tag SuperTalk Outdoors, and we'll post it on our social media platforms as well. There's just a lot going on these days as it relates to bears in your department, isn't there?
Yes, there is. We had so we just finished up den checks, which part of the program is to monitor reproduction. And during the wintertime, those females will actually stay in their den, the pregnant females. And so they'll stay in that den all winter long and into the spring. So during that time, we'll actually go in and locate those females, sedate those females, and then work up the cubs. So we'll give those cubs pit tags, which is like a tiny little microchip. And that way we can scan those individuals and identify them and kind of keep track of them for the rest of their life.
How do you find where the dens are? That's interesting.
So every now and then you'll have one that someone just happened to cross, and they'll call us and say, hey, we've got a bear in a tree or, you know, in a den somewhere. But most of the time it's bears that we collared this past summer. And so sometimes we'll get GPS points, but the problem with the GPS is they have to have satellite reception. And when you're inside of a a cypress tree, that's not always the case. And so we use a VHF transmission. So we use a directional antenna to go in and find that bear. First of all, a lot of times with an airplane, and then we'll actually go in on the ground and locate that bear after that.
Is that where usually the dens are? I know the den could make many different forms, but you mentioned cedar tree. Tell me more about that. Or cypress tree, excuse me.
Yeah, a lot of times it's in a cypress or an old oak tree because those are the ones that are usually have, you know, hollow spaces that are large enough to hold bears. And we see a lot of that denning behavior in the trees in the South Delta specifically because you have a lot of times where the water, you know, especially in the wintertime, is unpredictable. So if you have a den on the ground and then you find yourself 2 feet underwater, that's not a good thing for to have your den there. So, but it could be ground dens. You know, we worked up several this year that were in underneath slash piles. So places that have been clear cut, logs have been pushed up, and they kind of excavated right under there. There's a pretty wide variety of how they could make those dens, but it's really amazing the spaces that those bears can fit into and the entrances they are. A lot of them I could barely get myself into them, and there's a 250-pound female in there. It's kind of amazing when you think about
it. That really is incredible. Hey, you think about you guys in late 2022 had a lot of success. I think you collared 8 bears then. How do you go about catching one? Do you well, I'll let you tell the story. I'm not going to guess about it.
Yeah, so a lot of times the ones that we collared this past summer were landowners that we've done a lot of work with in the past. We've got a lot of good landowners that we have good relationships. But what we'll do is we'll set up a culvert trap, which is basically as the name implies, it's a big section of culvert with a guillotine gate. So it's essentially a giant live trap. And usually bait them with day old donuts because they're easy to get. They're usually free, and bears have an incredibly good sense of smell. And who could turn down a donut? So that's usually what we use to get them in, and then once we have them in the trap, then we sedate them from there and collar them, and let them go.
Who figured that out? What a cool! I mean, donuts to get bear.
Yeah, some things you kind of I guess whoever started off didn't have a picnic basket like Yogi and Boo Boo, right? So they just kind of used the donut. But some of those things, it's just, hey, this is how we've done it. They're easy to do. It's easy to get, and you just kind of roll with it. Just one of those things that if it's not broke, don't fix it.
So are you guys using all that new technology so that when the bear gets inside there, you can literally watch it in there and push a button on the mobile phone and close it? How does that work?
Yeah, so we had talked about me being in the wild hog program, and last time I was on the show, that's where I was. And we have actually taken, it was back in 2018 and 19, we had the flood in the Delta. We actually took some cameras equipment off of my hog trap and then basically retrofitted it to fit one of the culvert traps and used it then. But I'm actually in the process of getting some of those cameras and actually tailoring them to some of those bear traps. And so that's actually in the works. I've got to get the aluminum fabricator that's going to try to put all that together, and then we're going to kind of build all that into one. So the short answer is yes, that's coming online here, hopefully by the summer.
So you're doing some innovation based on what you learned on the wild hog side. I'm not surprised to hear that, incidentally. Hey, listen,
necessity is the mother of invention, they say.
It is, isn't it? It is definitely the mother of invention. This is Anthony Ballard, who used to be the nuisance species biologist. We've talked about wild hog and other nuisance species many times on this show, but now he's the black bear program leader, as he pointed out, using some innovation that he learned in his prior life in the nuisance area. And we'll continue the conversation on the other side when we come back. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my friend, good friend actually, he's been on the show many times, Anthony Ballard, who used to be the nuisance species biologist. And he learned a lot about that stuff. And he's actually applying some of that innovation to the work that he's doing now as the Black Bear Program leader. You know, one of the interesting things I learned from you in preparing for the show is that when people think of the black bear, they just think that they're all going to go hibernate. They're all bear going to go hibernate. They're just going to disappear for a period of time, and they'll reappear in the spring. But that's actually not the way it works. Talk to me more about that.
So when you use the word hibernation, it's technically, it's kind of a ubiquitous term that people can understand and know what that means. A better name for it would be carnivore lethargy or torpor, which is sort of descriptive of not as deep of a sleep. They do still experience that drop in body temperature and the drop in respiration and metabolism, and that's to conserve those fat resources and use them as efficiently as possible. But they do actually get out and forage, especially with the commonality of feeders on the landscape, particularly if it's a male or a female that doesn't have cubs in the den. They'll get out and forage, and I mean, if they can consume those free calories during deer season, a lot with pretty little effort, they're going to do that. And so, particularly the males, they'll get out and, if we have a really cold front that comes through, they'll stay in a den for a little while to kind of pass that by. But a lot of times they're out of the den a lot more than people realize.
That's very, very interesting. Listen, there's a lot more coming up as it relates to the bear. How can people learn more about the bear? How do they see observation maps, et cetera?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that we're kind of launching this week. You mentioned Bear Week on social media. That's going to be a really good crash course on kind of everything bear in those posts. And then, of course, our website, the Black Bear Program website, has a lot of good resources on there. There's more material than most people want to read on there about black bears. And then we encourage people to give us observation reports, to go on our website. One of the first buttons you'll see on the black bear page is to report a bear sighting. So before that came into our program and we were able to view that. But one thing that I wanted to do was kind of tell that story of, where these bears are being seen. And so we're making a public map that'll drop later on this week, probably either today or tomorrow, where the public can go on and actually view all those public reports that have been submitted and see where bears in the state are being observed most.
Hey, back in the late 1990s, I had the honor of being president of the Mississippi Wildlife Federation, and I remember really well back in those days, now over 30 years ago, that the Louisiana Black Bear Program was kind of engaged in our organization, and it was so rare back then to even see a bear. What's happened in the last 30 years that's caused an increase in the population?
Well, it's a little bit of multiple factors. Number one is of course they've had federal and state protection in the state of Mississippi, but we've also seen a lot of immigration from Louisiana and from Arkansas. So Southeast Arkansas has kind of that White River population, and then Louisiana, the most dense population is right there at Tensas, right across the river from us. And so over the years, most of the bears that we have in the state, at least the ones that kind of established our breeding population, came from one of those areas, swam the river, and set up shop here in Mississippi. So then we also have a breeding and growing population in the Mobile Basin in Alabama. and so you're kind of seeing some immigration from other states, and I fully expect that to continue and to build on itself.
The range of a black bear is pretty significant, isn't it? In some ways, I recall some of the conversations you and I have had about hogs and how they can cover a bunch of ground, but black bear can really a single black bear can really cover a lot of ground, can it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there was a report on, I can't remember where it was, I read it, but it was a black bear that they were actually doing research on relocating back black bears. Tennessee was, and they took a female from the Smoky Mountain National Park at a campsite there that was causing problems, relocated her 50 miles away, and she covered 4 states and roughly 1,000 miles, and ended up right back at the same campsite again. So it's when you talk about range, the textbook will say 5,000 acres or so for a female, 20,000 or so for a male, but the truth of it is, if a bear wants to just up one day and walk 20 miles, that's no problem at all.
That's really incredible. Listen, as people become more aware of your program, especially during Black Bear or Bear Week, and also the fact that your social media presence is going to really increase, we got less than a minute. Tell people how to report bear sightings.
So the best way to do it is to go to MDWFP.com, go to Wildlife and Hunting, and then click on the Black Bear Program button, and like I said, it's a big green button at the top of the page. It's the first thing you see that says report a bear observation.
That's MDWFP, and what that stands for is Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks.com to learn more about the Black Bear Program. Anyway, listen, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend.
Always a pleasure.
This has been Anthony Ballard, the new guy, head of the Black Bear Program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. It's been a pleasure. Hey, listen, as I end every show, stay safe when you're in the outdoors and pray for the people, for sure, of the Delta. They really need your prayers. Have a great day. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.